for joining us. My name is Tatiana, and Gosia, my colleague, will present the JUSThood today. I'm actually an anthropologist myself, and then I was studying urban studies, and now I'm working with design and design foresight, so very interdisciplinary. And Gosia is an architect and urban designer who works a lot with creative placemaking. So this project, and we have a third colleague, Honia, who is also an architect and urban master planner. Oh my God, it's not moving. Okay, it's moving. So actually this is us, and maybe from the beginning I can tell you the story, how we started, because initially the idea was to develop sort of a new methodology, how to envision the future of the neighborhoods, but I would say more in artistic or experimental way. But then when we started to work, three of us, actually, Gosia and Honia, they brought a lot of new knowledge. I mean, at least for me, in terms of this urban design and urban master planning, to sort of translate these futuristic and experimental visions into a more applied techniques and how we can actually do something in the neighborhood. So that's how the JUSThood was born, I would say, which is basically a community-based method to empower inhabitants in envisioning their future equitable neighborhoods. And when we started working together, I will just take you through a journey, let's say, of our thinking about this methodology, how we started during the whole process. So we started with this question: what is common between children, fish, and women in cities? Basically, we had this question, and there is a famous saying in Polish that children and fish have no voice, and also we included women, that in cities like these kind of three groups, we don't have a voice. And who has the voice in cities is men. They are men, because unfortunately the design of cities, and actually in the broader sense, the objects that we have nowadays, they have been designed according to the standard, and the standard is men of very particular height, like 1.83 centimeters. And yeah, basically what we have everything around nowadays was designed for the standards, but it was not designed for all different ages or genders that we have nowadays in cities, because of course in cities we have different people living in different communities. And also when we were discussing this topic, three of us, we have been working a lot with community engagement in general, like in the past. And when we are reflecting on our work or on the work of the colleagues, or what we have seen, what was happening in the community engagement sphere, we came to a conclusion that a bit this all community engagement sometimes, or most of the times in some countries, it's all one big inclusion hoax, because okay, we do a lot of participatory engagement and community engagement, but in the end, do we really know what the communities need? Or maybe sometimes we ask people what they need, and then we design the same kind of template neighborhood and spaces. So or it's done, you know, just if you receive some grants or the money from the local governments, you use this community participation just as a check on the paper in order to prove that you have done it. But then actually a lot of ideas, they are not being implemented, or they have not been looked into thoroughly enough. And to tackle this problem, we came up with an idea to merge sort of three different fields of studies, which are spatial equity, master planning, and participatory futures. And now just briefly, I will go one by one to explain why we exactly chose them, to focus on them in developing our methodology. So first of all, about spatial equity, what does it really mean? So for instance, when we think about the mobility standards, let's say normally we think about walking, like pedestrians, maybe very rarely sometimes the disabled people, even more rarely maybe the biking in many countries, and of course the cars. But if we think in reality, there are a lot of much more diversity in every type of mobility. Also, if we think about the gender, about the socioeconomic status of people, about different mobility transport options. So there is much more, and normally we never think about these issues. Or even if we move from humans to non-humans, like nowadays in design in general, and also in urban design, this is a very, unfortunately, is not a very well discussed topic, but it's increasing on the rise, how we include non-humans in our design. And of course, it's about animals, plants, but even like here, we included other elements because, for instance, with COVID-19, we could see that actually, the virus was playing a very important role as a non-human stakeholder in all the processes of our lives. So we have to think about different stakeholders beyond humans in what we design nowadays. And then this was about special equity. And when we think about participatory futures, I don't know if you have seen this cone, but it's very famous futures cone done by Boris, where it shows that there is no one single future that we have like in our society, let's say, because as you can see, the torch, like which goes straight, it's a probable future. So what will probably happen? But at the same time, there are many other different kind of futures. There's a preferable, there's possible, plausible futures. But nowadays we have sort of this perception of future, which is predetermined, and normally is predetermined by the privileged. Like if we take the urban design, it's mostly politicians or the top-down urban planners who decide what will be our future places. But here we try to expand a little bit more and try to explain to the citizens that actually the future isn't given as it's written here, and which is why we can shape it and we can also explore it, and also a bit in a speculative way, we can explore these futures. And just to give a brief introduction about the participatory futures, it was sort of created as a merging between future studies and public engagement. And the goal of participatory futures that it helps people with different kind of methods to understand the current situation that they have, and also develop a collective image of the future that they want. And this sort of participatory futures can be done in many different ways. It can be done through the games, partially what we do, or it can also be done with the help of some speculative or even experiential futures, like as forum-based theaters and etc. And the importance of this approach, as we think, is that it actually democratizes long-term and future thinking. So as I was saying, it sort of stimulates people to think about not even 1 year ahead, but maybe 5 or 10 years ahead, and also to take power and sort of agency of what can be done in the future. The second very important thing is that it enhances public imagination, which is very, very important, because also what we normally do in the participatory workshops is that we ask people, what do you want? And normally people say we want more benches or we want more trees. So they really not try to think maybe beyond typical ideas, let's say. So this method, helps to expand the imagination. And also, ideally, it informs the collective actions in the present by building these future visions, so that they can also be divided sort of in the pathways that they can follow, they can continue to in order to reach this future vision of their places. And Gosia will tell a bit about master planning.
Yes, so adding to the two fields that Tatiana explained, we decided to add master planning, which is a very top-down vision of city development, neighborhoods, streets. And the problem very often is that we encounter is that people do not know about the visions that they are created around them or the future neighborhood and so on. And very often they do not feel ownership of what's beyond their private houses, and they are aware about the special surrounding beyond their homes. So we wanted to invite and like kind of explain master planning and let people kind of give the ownership also about the neighborhood they have. And we kind of imagine like when you move into a new house, you always get the plan of the apartment. What we believe, you should also receive a plan or master plan of the neighborhood you're going to move in, so you know what are other what's beyond the house. And why the master plans are so important to us. There's many reasons. And the next slide, sorry. First of all, they represent a window to the future of neighborhoods. Next, they're guiding communities in their decision. They help. They give. They are the tool for being able to make right decisions for the future of the development or neighborhood. And I think most important, they're moving from informality to formality, from words, thoughts we have and we speak out loud to something that is concrete, that can register and gather other information and make them formalized, and being the next step to actually make it possible in the future. So if you have something on the map, this is something that it's real and it's in the right place and so on. And also can give the recognition for the top down institutions for things that they don't know. And yeah, the most important is the empowering. They can empower the communities by having the tool, and also they can work as a tool for facilitating the practices. And thanks to that, the master plan will not be the end product that we see only at the end, and after that there start the change or the development, but it becomes a part of the whole process, that we start with it, we go with it through, and then we have the final project afterwards.
Yeah, and so now with the JUSThood method, actually we were developing for a few months, and then since September we are being tested. We're testing this method in different places, and so far we can see that the whole JUSThood method, let's say, can be placed almost right in the beginning of the design process. Of course, it's about participatory process, but it's sort of this bridge between the participatory process with the citizens, with the community leaders, and with the professionals, architects, urban designers, and planners. And only then we see the professionals, such as engineers, transport and infrastructure professionals. Because, for instance, nowadays, if we design the neighborhoods or urban or public spaces, or the cities in general, if we ask the professionals, like, what do we need in cities? Of course, the transport engineer will say that we need more roads, because this is what they think about. So in a way, we cannot also blame them. We have the expertise. So we believe that we really need these new methodologies to insert in the beginning, but in a structured way, to help to merge the citizens and the community leaders with the professionals as urban designers, architects, and planners. And of course, we see this master planning process, as Gosia was saying now, going through the whole process. So it's not only in the end where we put out all our ideas on the paper and then this is the final product. No, it's an evolving product that grows and enriches throughout this process and throughout the years as well. And so this is basically the process that we follow so far, which consists of 3 phases. The first one is that we work with the community leaders. So we develop sort of a template of the neighborhood where we gather a lot of information about the spaces and trying to understand, analyze the spaces. And also in this step, we introduce the concept of spatial equity and participatory futures and master planning to the community leaders. So we are sort of on the same page about the process and about the importance of the process. And the second phase is participatory workshop with the residents and with the community leader. And the third one is development of the master plan. So this is just to briefly, maybe we can introduce you how we conduct the workshops with the residents. So we have developed this, method, which is based on 3 sets of cards, which we give to inhabitants. So the first, I will go in details a bit later, but we have 3 sets of cards. First is what if cards, then persona cards, urban design cards. So during the workshop, the people, they get these different sets of cards, and then they have sort of instructions they need to follow. So they need to take the first set of cards, read the question, then take another one, and then they need to develop ideas and put them on the map or draw on the map. We can also talk about these challenges because I think we encountered a lot of difficulties as well, how to motivate people and how to make them to draw actually and to engage with the maps. But basically the what if cards, they're just what if questions, and they're divided into 3 categories about humans, non-humans, and sort of bonus questions in general. So we have, this is just 3 examples, like what if a child was a mayor of the city? What if plants would have the same rights as human rights? Or the bonus questions, we actually have a lot about climate change, like what if in the future the average temperature was 45 degrees, and etc. So this is the first card that they receive, and this is sort of helps them to emerge, no, not to emerge, to immerse into the scenario and try to imagine the situation that it's written. And then the next card they get is a persona card, which helps them to understand the persona within this scenario. So here we don't have the child, but for instance, the pregnant woman, we also have a question about pregnant women, like what if only pregnant women will be living in the neighborhood? And then you get this persona card about pregnant women, which if you're not a pregnant woman, especially for men, it was very helpful to imagine how it is to be a pregnant woman. So then they read the characteristics, what they like, what they don't like, and it helps them also to imagine this persona within this scenario. And then they take urban design cards. Actually, I think we have 7 urban design cards, which ask them to specifically design different elements in the neighborhood within this scenario. So urban design cards, I mean, they're just written in a funny way to engage them. But basically, each card asks to describe the neighborhood, how the streets look like, how the buildings look like, sidewalks, greenery, public art, or the mobility options. But also in a funny, as you can see, way to also engage them and try to explore this scenario. And so basically, and then based on these cards, they try to put the ideas on the map. And this is just some pictures from the workshops that we have conducted in September and October. So we have conducted 3 workshops in Katowice in Poland as a pilot project. The first one, in this, so for instance, here we had a very diverse group, I would say, in terms of age, gender. Here we had much more kids because we were throughout the whole day there. There was a festival, so there were more kids, I would say. And then, there was also a third one somewhere, but we also conducted the workshop in Spain, and also, this is also in Katowice. And also we tried to conduct it with the students and to design the university campus instead of the neighborhood using modified cards, like based on what the students need.
Yes, so we're gonna dive in a little bit more into the 3 workshops we conducted in Katowice. So they were the pilot workshops. So we had 3 different districts, and we focused on 3 different fragments and scales within the districts. So in Murski, we looked into the streets. In Kossuth we looked into entire block, and Dąbrówka Mała, the whole neighborhood. And also it was interesting that each district was located in different part of the city, so the surrounding was different, and also group of people living in the neighborhoods was different, so we can kind of compare the output of the workshop in between. And the outcome 1, it's input. So the significant and diverse input from the inhabitants. So we actually, at the first workshop, we did 2 different workshops within. So first one was a very typical one that we normally do. So we ask them very simple questions like, what do you want in your neighborhood? What do you don't like? And what would you like to change? And very often the answer is very simple, as Tatiana said before, I want a bench to sit. The second time we used our methodology, and we got much broader answer and much more detail. So not only I want a bench, but I want a bench in a quiet place because I would like to read and I don't want to be interrupted by my neighbor. I want a bench that they face each other so people have more in another place. I want to have benches that face each other so they foster some social interactions. I want a chair instead of a bench. I want a bench that's that fits different sizes. So if I go with my kids, they can sit more comfortably than on the bench that is sized for a man. And then we have some other examples about public transport, that the bus stop should actually be in another place, that, for example, there should be, when we have city bikes, there also should be city bikes for kids, which is not implemented right now. And then the next one we have about animals. That was actually quite funny. There was one woman that knew exact way of a hedgehogs in the neighborhood. So she managed to put on the map the exact roads. And she really emphasized that we should care about them and make this safe for them to cross the street and so on. And also to leave natural leftover branches and leaves for house for animals for autumn and winter. So that's kind of like the overview, how different it is, like how much we try with our methodology to dig deeper. What do you need? Not just a bench. That's something that we hear that other neighborhood got. It's like very often from time to time there are trends, like a table for chess that nobody actually plays in the neighborhood, and so on. And then the next it's acknowledge, uncover, and advocate. So here, besides the inputs of the residents, most importantly, we think is that they acknowledge the presence of diverse users with the empathy. So just realizing that there are people with different abilities, with different lifestyle that living around me, just noticing and acknowledging that there are people that live differently around me, to uncover their desires, as I said before, what actually we need and what we need in the future, but like really ask. And then to advocate for humans and non-humans who are excluded, to make their presence visible and tangible. So especially for animals that they cannot say anything, but thanks to that we can actually have a discussion and think about what do they need in that particular place. And also very often participatory workshops, there are only certain groups that show up, and to have this ability to at least have a discussion about those who cannot come, or and then the last is master plan. So as I mentioned before, we want that it's something tangible, so it can be further developed in the future. And very often, if you have already something on the map, it's much easier to go to a municipality, and very often there is a chance that if there is a development in the future or changes in the neighborhood, they're going to be done right because they already have the specific idea. And we want to, this is just an example, we are in process of making them, that we want to also put it in the neighborhood so it's visible, so it's always there, and you can always kind of refer to it in the future. And the next slide is, Tanya.
I think this is just a funny, but I think important phrase we came up, that we need to hear master plans roar. And by roaring, we mean that the master plans, they actually give you responsibility. Also from what we are seeing from our experiences with people, is that once you develop an ideas, and then you have it visible, you also feel responsible for the further actions that you should take as a community. That, of course, coming from that, it also gives you the ownership of the agency that you can actually play in the neighborhoods. Then it gives you sort of this push for action, because if you design an idea or design your future vision, you actually, I mean, the participants, they felt like they can act now because they have these results in a way and ideas. And then also what we think is very important, it gives respect from people of their neighborhood. So we also hope for this, to be honest. We cannot measure it, of course, right now, but we hope that it will give, so they will start caring a bit more about the neighborhood, the surroundings so not destroying, new things in the neighborhood. So they would develop this sense of respect also towards, not only towards everyone, but also towards the material things that are around in the neighborhood. And I don't know. And maybe just to give you a brief conclusion about the activities that are in the progress and also our future plans, is that right now, as Gosia said, we are working on developing the actual master plans, and also because we want to install them in Katowice, and then also organize an exhibition in Katowice to sort of present these results to the municipalities. And also we will do the same in Milan, in one of the university campuses, presenting it to the rector of the university with the ideas of the students. And then the second thing we're doing right now is that we are developing different sets of cards, because also we have been, after we have done the workshops in October especially, we went to different conferences and presentations to talk about the project. And actually we got some requests from different fields to modify and to adapt the cards and the game to different settings, because people got very interested to experiment. So now we are developing the sets for schools, but maybe it should be phrased more like for educational facilities, also at universities and schools, because also, for instance, in schools, we have to work with the small kids, which is a very different engagement group, and we have to really modify and think how we should implement it. Then we also got sort of an offer to try to experiment with the workspaces, because also our offices, let's say, were not designed for everyone and not for women, for pregnant women. So how we can also adapt these questions and speculative thinking for the working spaces. And also, of course, we're expanding the urban spaces, because as we mentioned before, we experimented with different scales like streets, blocks, and neighborhoods. So we will continue in the same way. And the third one, which I think we are very excited about, is to create a database of sort of like a library of case studies of all the projects that we have done. And we already have a website that we are also currently building, but it's working, where we will have a dedicated section to all the projects, including the master plans, the process of how we were working, where the cards will be available. So we want to share this knowledge and hopefully in the future, maybe connect somehow these different neighborhoods and places in different countries and learn from each other and inspire each other for more projects. And also to maybe motivate other urban designers and planners to make the master plans that they're working on open, because right now everyone is keeping it to themselves. So we don't have a lot of knowledge. We don't have a lot of data like about the master plans in general. So we want to start out of this movement, if you can call it like this. And yeah, the last one, we are still trying to increase awareness by giving different talks and presentations. So during our project in Katowice, we gave an interview to the national TV channel, and then we were presenting since then at different conferences, organizing lectures for the students. And that's it. So if you have any questions, we are very happy to answer. And actually, we also had a question for the audience. We were just curious if maybe if you have ever seen, or if you know that you have a master plan of your neighborhood or the place where you live. And if not, do you think, I don't know, it will be useful for you? And maybe just general ideas. But if you have any questions, we are happy to answer.